to Dave Talk Stuff. Oh my, the destructive impact of Stalinist feminism. Now, there are many factions of feminism, but of course, the largest seems to be the authoritarian variety of. Now, this is because most second wave feminists from the 60s, authoritarian, greedy grifters, most of them pretend to be Christians. They're hypocrites, but their hypocrisy is spreading to the younger generation. Of course, they are completely clueless. Now, yesterday I brought you the fact that the goth waifu Amelia, a product of British propaganda, swept the UK nation not as a symbol of resistance to the patriarchy, but instead make UK great again. And of course, it triggered a feminist cow, a fake grifter, a phocon. She's so blaming weak men who created women like this. No, it was you silly cunt. It was feminists who voted in the Labour. It is feminists who voted for the socialists in Scotland. It's feminists who got the laws changed so that men could not be armed because they were a threat to women. And gutless politicians, left and right, bound to the almighty feminist vote. And of course, her immediate response is keep pulling your pork. Of course, the dildo writer would say that. And she says I'm a chronic masturbator without even knowing me, of course. She assumes that I ruined my marriage. Like, this is what these cunts do. They don't know you, but they lash out. Why? Well, they're toxic. And they wonder why Moat defend them. And she says, many men defend me. So she's a vine swinger. She sucks cock. Of course, she says she has real connections, not back alley meetups, right? She's a real woman. And of course, she doesn't deny that she's Satanist. She just keeps saying, keep pulling your pork and calling me a liberal wanker. But of course, anything else? Me, a liberal? What drug are you on, bitch? Of course she's a bitch. She's a hyped up narcissist. You know, probably got a modicum of talent, but hey, she actually can cut away as she falls on her face. But of course, she has obsessions, man. She's totally obsessed, right? But you see, she's obsessed with Carney, but she keeps only obsessing about women, of course, and weak men. She just latches onto any cause. Obviously, a worthless cunt. You're a worthless cunt. Whoops. What happened here? And what do we do with worthless cunts? Oops. Where is she, really? Connected via Canadian app? Okay, on a phone, based in Canada. Of course, a libtard. See, Canadian Conservatives don't exist. You know they're libtards, right? It's like Australia. They don't have a right-wing party. They have a near left and far left, right? See, she's a freaking feminist. But of course, Facebook, Twitter, etc., are full of them. But there are people, sane people, on X, but not many, of course. I got something wrong today with my video sharing. Some of my clips aren't loading, so I have to switch screen for some reason to get them to load again. But of course, most people don't know the Stalinist influence on feminism, because in the 1960s, a significant amount of pop culture was overwhelmed by feminism. However, pop culture was still in that, there was still a lot of good material, a lot of family orientated stuff. Not everything was feminist from that time, but influential figures combined Marxist methods with postmodern interpretations, aka a distortion of reality, that created second wave feminism that postulates that all inequality is a political subject, right? If there's any difference, whether they be British feminists who openly stated they were Stalinists, that they wanted to destroy marriage and destroy society. And they have across the world. They have undoubtedly destroyed society with their most powerful weapon has been social media in the recent times. But already then, they had the culture, right? The idea of an ideal woman was to cook and make babies was destroyed by the 1980s. Where populations have been in decline since the 1980s. Women being a cunt bitch is on the increase, even now. Even though many women may not identify as a feminist, it is increasingly clear that most are cunt bitches who are selfish, to say the least. Now, I am. Hey! Haha. Rumble Studio, there's something wrong. Yes. Go to Rumble Studio. Let me try again. Let me. Where is it? Uh, all right, hold on. I'm in Rumble Studio now. Okay. Hold on. What's happened here? All right, where's the clip? All right, try again. Shut up! What? Didn't. Shut up! There you go. Go. Right. Now, did that work? Single town. Click that like button, bigots. Yeah, kicked out. They are wankers, yeah. They are indeed. All right. I'll open up chat in a minute. But here, there you have sound. Yeah. I had to delete and upload the video. I don't know why it didn't have sound, but it did. Right. So, right. I think I had I don't know what happened. graphics, dynamic overlays, video clips. Yeah. What's the settings? Edit settings. Yeah, I think in the settings I had it on mute. So I'm just gonna. I think it's the only clip I can play with audio at the moment. I don't know. I don't know how they got all muted. But the Amelia taking place. I mean, right across the world, there are weird protests going on right now, but they only attract a few thousand people. These aren't the majority. The media makes it out that feminists are the majority, but I don't think they are. I think the majority are just weak. I think the nuclear family was destroyed by weak politicians. You know, the breaking up of the family, even now, is considered an act of revolutionary. I think, however, a lot of it's caused by economics. And again, if it comes down to economics, it comes down to that there are rich people profiting off this, right? Feminist writer Marlene Dixon, she's one of those performative feminists that I was talking about the other day, grifters, who just, you know, have the bourgeois luxury of politics, you know, to come up with neo-Marxist, they attended universities, got degrees and all these things, but all they do is set out in life to destroy marriage and create some utopia which they'll never live in, right? And of course, Millett is responsible for Stalinist feminism criticism and critical race theory. You know, that it actually started as critical race theory. It didn't start as critical race theory. It started as feminist legal theory. The idea of oppressors creating legal systems of oppression, such as marriage, to oppress people. And of course, in Russia, during the height of the Soviet Union, there were only 57,000 live births compared to 154,000 abortions. The only reason why people got married was to take care of each other in old age, because they had no state institutions to take care of them. But their justification was they saved millions from starvation or suffering and documented abuses of the. So historians are gonna look back on this period as mass psychoses. But we've seen mass psychoses throughout history, right? These women are not new. Feminists in Iceland held a day of protests. Yeah, and men keep on going to work. You know, these women, right, definitely deserve the back of a hand. I make no bones about it, right? I think violence against women, just like any form of punishment, has justifications. And one of the justifications, of course, is the fact that women predominantly are not soft, they're fat, they're toxic, they're arrogant, and they only care about accumulation of power, wealth, and privilege. That is, feminism has no bones about equality. They have no morals, right? And if you look at feminism, right, it's anti-family, anti-institutional, right, except for anything that competes with their power, right? Even care of the sick or the young is done by state-funded social services, state-subsidized care, no-fault divorce. Now, no-fault divorce is the biggest killer of populations, right? When populations no longer get married, you see with it all goes back to Sumeria. When the Semites invaded Sumeria, they did so as refugees. They come down the Euphrates River. They started as peaceful traders, built up their numbers, and then they convinced one of their kings that he was the voice of Asta. Right? They used this ancient system of horns and smoke, and they would release baskets of locusts into his garden, and they created this illusion, right? These lights in the sky and voices booming, that he was the Asta, and they got women to literally cut their unborn out of their bellies and throw them into the fires. But when the Semites destroyed the Aramites, they had the gall to take on their language, take over their cities, and then started working on the Persians. And that's why Persia destroyed Babylon. History won't teach you the crimes of this cult, right? Feminism was created by the cult of Judah, right? The cult of destructive feminism, right? And of course, sex is their currency, right? But it's now working against them, because let's look at it. They're most authoritarian states in the world. Even today in India, China's the lowest birth rate in the world now. India is now starting to suffer. Now, I forget what the numbers was, fall of birth rates. India, women are openly talking about fertility wars. When India has fallen below the replacement rate. India has an aging population that within 20 years will die. Half the population of India within 20 years is expected to die childless. Most of their children, the crude birth rate was started at 18 per thousand, peak in 23. It has fallen that fast, right? Japan took 20 years to fall below replacement rate. Korea took 8 years. China only took 3. India only took 1. Yes, Marxism was created by the Jews. Correct. Marxism, however, do you know where feminism comes from? See, Karl Marx did not have a son. His wife was barren, but he had a mistress, a housemaid, and he didn't pay her. Did you know he had an unpaid maid that he routinely sexually abused, and she had a daughter? And when Marx died, his daughter inherited the Marxist estate. To this day, Karl Marx's grave cost you a tenner to visit. His books, Das Kapital, go to the Marx estate. They are the greediest capitalists in the world. But his daughter created feminism. Yeah, Karl Marx. Karl Marx, the world's most privileged British citizen of all time. Traitor to the crown, openly calling for rebellion, openly calling for mass murder of British citizens, and yet never was taken to task, let alone to the woodshed, never punished for anything. Now, I think it was just a year or two before Karl Marx's death when the Tsar approached Britain for help. And of course, you know what happened. The British betrayed the Tsar, of course, and funded the revolutionary state against the Tsar because they were fearing that a rising Russia would be a competitor to their pathetic empire. They have no morals or scruples. The British are just as bad, right? Wouldn't have Marxism or the spread of Marxism without the British. Yeah, he should have been hung for treason. But There are suggestions that Marx wasn't a British citizen at all, but he was merely a puppet or a pawn of the establishment anyway, because Engels and Friedrichs and others were the ones who did all the actual real work, where he was just a figurehead, an opium addict they had conveniently used. His father was a rich rabbi, and they think that they were bleeding him of money because the Marx estate isn't that wealthy, but there are some rich and wealthy Marx. You know, they did produce some offspring. I think Marx's brother or something. Because, yeah, but India, do you imagine, right? Going from having a massive birth rate in less than a year down to nothing. The main causes of decline is women. Mass urbanization of single women refusing to marry. The population set to peak. It's already peaked, sorry, and it's now in decline. Yeah, single town. I just put it out there. I have a couple of viewers here on Rumble right now. A whole bunch of on X, but viewer count is not available live, but I can see it on. I could go to X right now and see how many are there. It just doesn't get. Yeah, I got a bunch of people over on X, so I'll just wait a little bit longer, see if anybody wants to come on and discuss in studio. If not, that's fine. But if you got any questions right now, I mean, the main cause of population decline is worldwide. It's the same reason. It's women. Women keep bringing up the same talking points around the world, right? They want free healthcare, right? They want more. Most countries already have maternity leave, but they want more maternity leave. They want to be taken care of in their old age. They want all of them, same talking points. Money, 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 money. Free healthcare, free services. All these things cost money, right? The average woman wants an average of $2,000 a week in privileges, right? Free healthcare, free public transport, free nappies, free food, free, and of course, free education, free. But they're not working. Women are 31% less productive than men, and that's the average woman. Bet you this cunt ain't as productive. Most women. How many women are really employed or part-time employed? That's the actual. Employed women. It should be full time because it's the part timers don't pay enough, pay nothing, barely anything. Country by country, worldwide, only 38% of women work full time compared to men, who make up 47.9% of employment. Sorry, what's that? No, it's country by country, right? So it's peak. So the peak for women in the workforce is in the West at 47, right? Average worldwide is 38. And the peak for men, yeah, women are disproportionately working part-time roles. Yeah, they take part-time work. And they want privileges. And they want income gap pay. So if they lose their job, they want their welfare at their old pay rates. If they go on maternity leave, they don't want welfare. They want their same pay rate. Of course, they're always asking for the high pay rates, not the low pay rates. You know, when you talk to a secretary, she wants to be paid the same as a fireman, not a fireman paid the same as a secretary. You know, they want to bring their wages up, not bring other wages down. But that actually has the reverse effect, right? The more people who get higher pay, the more you have to raise taxes and prices, which drags everybody's pay actually lower. Increasing women's participation in the workforce. You already know we're overproducing, right? We overproduce goods every year. Tens of thousands of cars sit in the deserts of Australia right now, unsold, cannibalized for parts. How much overproduction in the world? So feminism is such a toxic effect, right? Industry's dirty secret, fashion, right? Uh, Billions of garments every year, around 30 to 60 billion are unsold. About 40% of total production goes unsold. Roughly one third of all food produced goes unsold. There's already, okay, the fashion industry is the highest for overproduction, followed by food, followed by financial loss, waste industries, right? These are industries created by the government that produce net nothing, right? Research, right? Research that produces nothing in decades is considered now a waste industry. That they have spent 60 billion annually on exorbitant programs. Now, believe it or not, this is all to absorb the wealth of society. They create these waste industries of bureaucracy, like railways to nowhere, building roads. These are all to create artificial wealth to prop up feminism. Because who are the largest consumers of fashion? Who are the largest consumers of food? Women are literally raping the planet. But the thing that has robbed most citizens of their self-governance is no-fault divorce. Women can go into court, say they're unhappy, and force a divorce. The original portrayal of no-fault divorce was, hi, I want a divorce. Do you? Yes. Okay, you got divorced. Even the Bible says, unhappy wife is like cancer. You get rid of her, right? She has no right to you. But the thing is, the Bible actually states specifically they have no rights. If a woman wants a divorce, right, if she is toxic, you get rid of her. She is entitled to nothing. But innocent men are being demonized and robbed on a daily basis, leading to more overconsumption. Breakup of families, that means 2 rentals, not 1. Breakup of children, child support, agencies to run this child support, more and more waste industries. But like old and all totalitarians, feminism is about power. There is no truth in feminism, but power. You saw that toxic cunt on X, right? No truth but power, right? She don't know me from a bar of soap, but she assumes I'm a wanker simply because that's the currency of the cunt. You know? Ooh, you can't get dick, you must be a wanker. You hate women, you must be a wanker. You know? She's just an... She doesn't even address the fact why this child is carrying an axe and a knife, right? Yes, it is because of men, but which men? Pakistanis. And why do we have Pakistanis in the West? The Jewish lobby, of course. But ultimately, we are living in borrowed times now where society is now counting down its collapse. China, yesterday, had a million march against the government. Iran, just in Tehran alone, was a million march against the government. How about America? The biggest anti-ICE protest. There were anti-ICE protests in what, 20, 30 cities out of how many? I think it's like 390, isn't it? Technical cities, they're not all real cities. But let's say out of 390 million people, right, 1,000 was the biggest protest. So let's say there was 100 so, you know, you'd need hundreds of protests in every city, right, to even match one protest in China. But it's not the majority. Most people don't give a fuck about these causes. The problem is the media is so bored. And I think one of the first solutions is turning off the mainstream media, which is happening, but I don't think fast enough. And I think Fox, we have to turn off Fox as well. I think, and I understand why a lot of men want to go their own way. I'm still the anti-feminist, right? But there is still, right, the belief out there in the ideal woman. And we're seeing a rise in that Gen Z who don't want to be the last generation. But they don't right now have enough guidance. They don't have enough political power. But really, as old feminists die off, yeah. Most people are realizing that beauty doesn't matter, right? They just don't want someone to be overweight, although some people like thick women, but I'm talking about cuddly, not toxic. But a lot of people out there, it's the crazy index, right? They know there's a fun zone, a unicorn, the dating zone. Women in the dating zone are closer to the danger zone. And there's the no-go zone, right? Because, let's face it, right? Toxic and fat, doesn't matter their personality. The majority of them are going to be in the danger zone. So, yeah. It's a nice little meme. I might just quickly grab this one. So, put that up there. But absolutely right. I know a lot of people would say this started with Obama, but no, it didn't even start with Obama, please. It started not even with Wilson, but in the modern era, it was Woodrow Wilson, opened the gateway to socialism. FDR institutionalized socialism in the unions. He stole all your gold. He tried to get all your guns. Truman, with his nuclear tests, sterilized over 100,000 white men. And these experiments were per year, all the way through. Most of the U.S. Army got sterilized without even knowing, and many people didn't know. Up until the 1970s, nuclear tests, the reason why the Republicans ended them was they were using these fallout tests to sterilize white men. But you can imagine if they went public with that? It was crazy. It is insane. Though they claim redheads are in the danger zone. Who, me? Not me. But that's where we're at. It's a crazy world. And the thing is, you know what we need, don't you? More people who can stand up to feminism. Let's see.
Screw your feminism.
Because they are in. They're in it. We're all in danger while there is these crazy women who are just going to get crazier by the year. When you don't. I think anything in government, in politics, in business, if there's no voice of reason in the room, if there's no opposition to anything, if we see this with absolute rulers throughout history, When there's absolute power, there's absolute anarchy and eventually collapse of civilization. And it's if you look more and more into history, you see there's always been the gynocentric model started with the Roman Empire when they changed Dionysus, but the worship of the vagina, you know, it's collapsed society after society. It's just that the collapses like Egypt, what Cleopatra was 5,666 years after the alleged founding of Egypt by Ebontep and all those. But there've been queens before, but they only had short periods. But each period of civilizational collapse has gotten shorter and shorter. And it's because the flow of information has sped up dramatically. The amount of information, the sharing of information, the collaboration. But it is clear that there is a dangerous cult that every time civilization doesn't go their own way, they push women into the fall zone. We have this, right? Western civilization, the birth of the Romantic Age, the 17th century, the collapse of civilizations, the rise of the British Empire, again collapsing under the weight of the hypocrisy of Queen Victoria, and the final nail in the coffin was the long and toxic rule of Queen Elizabeth. I don't care what people say, democracies don't matter when you have a powerful toxic figure that influences culture. The governments have no influence over culture. They could try, but when you have a look at America, the Elizabeth Taylor era, the Jane Fonda era, does anybody remember the presidents? Most people go, what about who really ruled under Joe Biden? It was Jill. What about Obama? It was Big Mike. What about Reagan? He was always referring to Nancy. It seems to be in the modern era there's a gynocentrism in the political sphere and of course, again, I'm not saying that Stalinist feminist is the majority. I think it is. I'm not saying with certainty, but it's definitely the number of influences, particularly Jane Fonda, and most others are, in fact, Stalinist style feminists. And again, Singleton, you hit it on the nail earlier that it was definitely the little hats. I think everybody's waking up that it's not just Islam. Islam, it's not Judeo Christianism. I love my Christianity, hold the Judeo. As for Islam, it's a corrupted version of Christianity, and it's Judaism, right? It's corrupted versions. Okay, it's neo-pagan bullshit created by the little hats to attack Christians, right? Create a radical barracks mentality, give them just enough understanding of Christianity, and then send them on their merry way on their jihad against these great evils, and break the cross and all these things. I mean, when you look up break the cross, Jewish symbols for mathematics, the spitting on Christians, you can find lots of videos on those. The um, tunnels of New York. Used to be a historian. I think he's what was his name? If I could find his book, right? He was talking about how the Austrian-Hungarian Empire was actually undermined by prostitutes, and who were running the prostitutes? The little hats. And what are they doing? They're laundering all their money and gold coins that they're taking from the Austrian-Hungarians through the Rothschild banks. And the Rothschild banks were taking all these gold coins into banks in Switzerland and giving them this fiat currency that they could use in Jewish stores, which is what was going on in Germany. So while the Jews were living in luxury in Germany, everybody else was starving because they had to come up with all these gold coins. They couldn't buy them. German marks couldn't buy anything. It was robbery. And again, it comes down to what happened after World War One. The women had the vote and they put Liberal governments in, and the Liberal governments immediately turned to financing by the little hats each and every time. You see this in England. England doesn't have a Tory party. They never had a Tory party. The Tories are a facade. They come out of the same universities as all these crazy feminists. So if these universities produce crazy feminists, are they going to produce anything else of note? You know, Churchill was a liberal. You know, it's just most countries don't have a real right wing. I think America, you look at the political spectrum, the Republicans are really just off center right. They're still nowhere near high on the freedom spectrum. Because if they really respected individual rights, they would have never, whether it's Reagan or Bush or any of the other Republicans, I can't remember, other than Trump, would actually do something. See, Trump is not a real Republican. He's a centrist, right? He's political wilderness. And until the Republican Party is a Republican Party again, which I don't think it'll ever happen, it'll be an America First Party from now on. It'll Trumpism will live on, maybe but then again, you never know, right? Reaganism died with Bush, but then again, this is what happens when it can happen, because Bush was never a Reaganite. He was a phocon. He was a war hawk. He was a liberal who ran in Texas. Texas failed, so he ran as a Republican. Bush was a college frat boy, an establishmentarian. And you look at the establishment today, and it's feminism all the way. It is not for the common man in any shape or form. So please support the channel. Support me on Ko-Fi, Patreon, buy my books, buy my merch. All my links are in the link tree. Thank you for coming. Again, big shout out. Thanks to Singletown. You're absolutely on the money. It's always about control, power, wealth. It all comes when you have control of the culture, of the financial system, and the media. But now, of course, they've branched into education and technology. Only breaking up the big monopolies is the way forward. The founders said so. See you in the next video. Bye for now.